Our next speaker it's quite a story. Joe Earhart. Joe has a software company. He started in banking. He worked with through a bank that went through some difficult times. Ended up kind of helping the regulators, and ended up creating a product and getting them to hire him. And then out of that came this software company, and he's been one of the great growth leaders in CEO Tech Forum that Mike Smith has, and we got to be with him in CEO Forum 1 for a fair amount of time. And every month it seems like he sees our expectations, as some of you on the call know, Tom Porterfield and Edwin and others. Joe has had a heck of a, when there's challenges, there's opportunities, right? So there's been a lot of challenges around some things as a result of COVID. One of them was the big surge in banking and all the loans that had to get through the pipeline. Joe was involved and his company was involved in making sure that would be streamlined. He was able to develop the technology in a very fast, robust manner so that the banks that had his software, he does a loan, everything but the legal documents of a loan, his software handles and manages. It's a great software. Market loves it. Seems like so he sells to banks. But what he did was, then he built for the banks a tool for the PPP, so they could handle and administer their responsibilities under the plan, because they have the loans on the books. And there was a little while there where we thought we're going to have a bunch of smaller loans where they wouldn't all get forgiven. But it looks a little better now after some legislation. But Joe's got a great story to tell you. I'm going to let him tell it to you. But he's one of our bright stars. He's a gazelle. His company is. He's humble. He's humble, but he's brilliant. And that's a great combination. And we've loved getting to work with him and hear his story. And so, Joe, tell us a little about what you've been up to lately.
Yeah, absolutely. Hard to follow Dr. Joe Thompson, though. I don't think that's going to work real well, but I'll try my best.
You'll do great.
Definitely don't know if we're a gazelle, Tim. Appreciate the kind words. Like most of you, when COVID started, our sales pipeline fell off the face of the planet. And we were preparing for what was going to be a rough ride. In a way, as Tim said, we were able to take what was going to be a bad day and turn it better, but that was mainly because of government PPP. We service financial institutions, which is something the state of Arkansas is known for. Systematics, which became FIS, was out of here. So we were able to take that and develop a system for PPP. If you ever have any questions on PPP loans, I have read every piece of documentation probably 30, 50 times by now. You can't, when you write the software to do it, you have to train the bankers that do it. So you can't rely, I mean, that sounds negative. We rely on lots of people to help us. I mean, lots of bankers, CPAs, other people come in and kind of say, hey, here's my thoughts. But if you're going to create the solution, you have to be the expert at it. And so we actually have a solution for the forgiveness side. And yes, there's a new law out that's going to change some stuff, but there's been a lot of confusion. And if you never heard the term IFR, interim final ruling, those are really final rulings. They like to put the word interim so they can change their mind later. But those are the rulings that affect PPP, and there's not an official IFR yet for the new congressional items that came out. But in short, we have built a solution for most of the banks in the state will be running it. So if you have forgiveness, I wish I could say Arvest, but I couldn't get those guys. They already had a solution, which I'm sure will be great. But if you work with most of the other banks in the state, you're going to, if you do forgiveness, you'll probably run through Testlar indirectly and not know it. But if you don't have a community bank, which I highly recommend, and Arvest is a community bank, if you don't have one and you don't have somebody to help you through, a lady named Jill Castilla from Edmond Bank of Oklahoma came to us and asked us if we could build she's got an idea she works closely with Mark Cuban, and said, hey, could you guys take what you're doing for banks and make a public version for those that do not have a community bank? And so that's what we did, and it's called ppp.bank. I won't take credit for coming up with the idea. I mean, we were building it for our customers, but we took everything we do for a bank. So what you will use, like if you bank with banks that, for example, and I could mention, you can see them on our websites, but like if you did a PPP loan with Simmons Bank or Legacy National or First National Bank of Fort Smith, and you're going to do forgiveness, you'll run through Testlar because that's how they'll run forgiveness. But if you don't have a community bank and you wanted to run through it and see what would I get, what's my forgiveness look like, that's what ppp.bank is. And I'd be glad to kind of walk you through it. I don't know, Tim, what you're looking for, answer questions. The biggest change that's come out is a lot of people weren't going to get forgiven because of the 8-week, 60 or 75% rule. That's all kicked down to 60% in 24 weeks. So, you still, payroll still a critical factor, still 60%, or you're going to start having weight reduction immediately in forgiveness if you hit below 60%. There was a misreading just a couple of days ago where most of the bankers believed if you went below 60%, you got no forgiveness. And the ICBA, the Independent Community Bank Association, actually emailed every banker saying that was the case. But the Treasury yesterday corrected that and said, we'll interpret the law. And that's as if you're under 60%, we'll reduce, not be zero. And that's the trouble with laws. It requires someone to interpret it. And so that's what we're waiting on from the Treasury, is what we call interim final ruling of the interpretation of what PPP forgiveness looks like. Right now, it looks like really it's the way it was before, but now with a 60% and a 24-week period. As a borrower, you literally have 16 months to apply for forgiveness. You've got the 6 months or the 24 weeks, and then you have 10 months after that before the bank will charge you interest. And that's all specified in the new law. Still waiting interpretation, but that's there. So Tim, I'd be more than willing to jump into pp.bank or ask questions. I'll always say I'm not an attorney. I'm not a CPA. And my advice is as is and can be completely wrong. And so take it what you will. But I feel like I have to say that so nobody tries to sue me or something. But not that I think anyone on this call would, but that's what you got to do.
Well, one of the things that we all want to appreciate here is Joe's, as you could tell, his target market is commercial banks. It's not us. So he went out of his way to build this for the benefit of small businesses throughout the country, right? And it's a great, robust tool. Like I said, Joe, can you pull it up and walk us through a little of it? And is that doable?
Absolutely, yeah.
Why don't you share your screen and just take us a little into it, and then we'll open it up for questions.
All right, so are you guys seeing what should be, that's downtown Edmond. Do you guys see that? That's downtown
Yes.
Springdale.
Yes.
So it's a national website. It's ppp.bank. It's and by the way, .bank are restricted domains. And so the folks that run that actually gave that to us as a free of charge, so for public service. And we don't make a penny off of this. We don't save any data. If you read our disclaimer, in fact, one of the biggest complaints we get is there's no save button. People are like, can I come back later? I'm like, no, we don't save anything. We do not want it to be, we don't want you to think for 1 second we're using your data for marketing or anything. It is a free tool. In no way does Testlar profit off of it. Does the bank people profit? Obviously it's good exposure of a free tool. I'm not saying there isn't some benefit, but it's designed to be essentially that. We are going to make, though, because of demand, we are going to make an export button where you can export what you put in, and that way later you can re-import it. Because there's no way to do a save button without violating our information policy that we put on it. But we are going to make a way for people to export and re-import their data so they don't have to start over. This is not updated with the new rulings because there's no IFR yet, so it's going to still be on the 75%. We, of course, legalese, we make people agree. Can you guys see I'm checking these boxes and going through it?
Yes.
So we try to walk you through it. If you've never seen PPP forgiveness, I have done this a bazillion times at this point, so I recite it in my sleep. But essentially, there are 3 steps, and any government form, it's just like a tax form. It always starts out backwards. You start out with the high-level summation, and then you go into a lower-level summation, and then you go to the very bottom worksheets. Well, if you fill out a tax form, that's an impractical way to fill it out. You start at the worksheets, you go up the summation, and then you go back to the top. The PPP forgiveness was the same way. So if you open up that 11-page app, which, by the way, there was a link here at the start if you've not seen it. Now, this will be updated by the Treasury. We expect this week, by the way. If it's not, it could have happened while we're on the phone call, but we do expect it. This thing kind of lays out some basic info and then runs the application backwards so that you start with worksheets, Schedule A, and then forgiveness. And there is only one schedule, which is the Schedule A. There is some talk and rumors that the SBA might come out with a single one-page app for those that had loans under, pick a dollar amount, 350,000. Those are rumors. There's no guidance to say that will happen yet. It may happen today, but there's, and some of the rumors have come true and some have not. That's why they're rumors. But right now, everyone has to do the 11-page app unless the SBA states otherwise. The application allows you to fill out stuff like borrower name. Technically speaking, you don't have to fill any of that out. We only need the numbers since this wasn't a free one. If you do fill it out, it will fill out the app for you. I've got data here saved because I filled this thing out so many times. Most critical thing, if you're doing this at home or wherever you do it, is the disbursement date. Every rule is based off disbursement date. You get that wrong and you'll get rejected the second the bank submits you to the SBA. Now that doesn't mean you won't get forgiveness. It just means they'll have to correct it. The disbursement date as defined by the SBA is the day you got your funds. The banks after you signed, they had so many days to disperse, but the second you got money in your account, no matter what you did with it, or the bank may have said you got your money, maybe you couldn't get to it, is the disbursement date. Your bank should be able to tell you that. Easiest way is if you had a bank, a lot of banks did a really good strategy of making you open a new checking account and putting your funds in there. The day those funds went in that checking account is most likely your disbursement date. If not, look at your loan and look for a date opened, the day the loan came on the core. Those are two ways to find it. If in question, call your bank, but it is critical because everything else is based off that. Even the 24-week period, the start date will be then. The other major questions people have is they've seen that there's something called an alternative date. That is only applicable if you have a pay period that was quicker than bi-week or weekly. So if you use our tool and you do twice a month, it'll just disappear. I will tell you with a 24-week period, it's almost irrelevant. I mean, you don't need, what was the point of an alternative was depending on, if you paid so quickly, you want I won't get into the technicalities of that, but I don't know very many people that are going to need the alternative covered period after this. Tom, I saw, was on the call. He can probably talk about that some, but with the 24 weeks, it's probably going to become irrelevant. And the alternative payroll period, unless the rules change, was only for payroll. So you couldn't, let's say you had some extra health insurance or rent you wanted to cover, you can't move that alternative to cover that rent. But once again, we're to 24 weeks. So your 24 weeks will be off the dispersed period. If anybody took an EIDL loan directly from the SBA, you do not get that back in forgiveness. You kind of and kind of don't. What I mean is if you took a $1,000 EIDL loan and you get $50,000 forgiven, you only get a check for $49,000 because the government's already given you $1,000 of your forgiveness. So that's why that question gets asked, is that has to be deducted out of the final amount. Demographics, I'm going to skip this. Technically speaking, you do not need to submit any of that. Every site will ask you because the SBA forgot to get demographics on the front end. And well, that just doesn't look good from a political standpoint when you can't say who got what loans. So they're trying to collect it on the back end. Number of employees, this can be a critical answer. I better answer those real quickly. And I'm going to try to go a little faster, a little slow. Worksheet, 99% of your work is here. In Testlar's program here, you can just skip it because you're not required right now to submit it to the bank. But if you do want to fill it out, which you can go through here, it's a fun thing to fill out. It'll do, calculations, like if it's owner's compensation, I'm just going to run through here real quickly one. How much did you make in 2019? Well, I made $10,000 in the 8-week period, which by this way will be 24 weeks when we update. And I made $12,000 in this period. It's smart enough to do the math to understand that you only get credit for 10,000. Because that's what the rule says. You get the greater of one of three amounts. At the time, it's 15,385 because that's 8 weeks. It'll become 3 times that size, or et cetera. So it will figure out what you're supposed to get based on what you enter. For time's sake, I'm just going to run through here. If you use our worksheet, it pre-fills these 5 boxes. If you have ADP or a payroll processor who's going to give you a pre-built worksheet, then you would say skip the worksheet and then fill in the 5 values they gave you. Or if you're CPA, a lot of CPAs are giving their clients, hey, here's your results for line 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5. If your CPA did that, great. You just fill these out and skip the worksheet. And then you come in here and add in, if you have anything else that you want to put in here. For speed, I'm just going to go through here and skip the safe harbor part and go on. Sorry?
Yes.
Last thing in here is it does ask you for mortgage interest payments and rents and utilities. And then down at the bottom, it will tell you what it believes your forgiveness amount should be. And in my case, because I put in a ton of numbers, it forgave everything, but my EIDL came back out and it said, you should expect to pay $1,000 because that's not going to get forgiven because of your EIDL. Now I'm running through here super quick. At the end, it will generate you a PDF that you can open. And this PDF is essentially the application filled out for you with all your information, including the generations of tables below and other things. And then it will tell you what documents you should be giving the SBA. There's a little bug there where the loading stays, and it guesses this based on what you filled out. So because you said you had X, Y, or Z, it's going to pick that item. Now I ran through here with some fake numbers and chunked through it pretty quickly. It does have a few bugs and a few calculations. If you're a sole proprietor on a Schedule C, line 31, we've got that rolled for a fix as soon as the new guidance comes out. In short, if you don't have any payroll because you're a sole proprietor, you're supposed to use a line off your Schedule C, line 31, I think is the actual line number. But that's probably way more info than anybody on this call wanted. But I would love to have questions or what you wanted. I've been living and breathing this for weeks. So.
Thank you very much. That's a nice test drive there. Tom Porterfield, we thought we built a nice tool, and we did. Ryan and you, but this goes to another level, don't you think? Tom, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Joe and his team have done a great job. I think that with the extension of the period from 8 to 24 weeks, Joe, would you agree with me? Unless you just have had a disastrous time after you took the PPP loan, most people should get close to 100% forgiveness.
Yeah, where's the belief, Tom? And you could say what your thoughts here. Our belief is where people will get hit now, before people get hit on the 75%, it's the FTE quotient amount. So essentially you'd have so many FTEs. Now, what's so weird about guidance, and I've talked to 100 people, and Tom, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is the guidance says you have to restore the employee amount by December 31st is what we believe the new date will be. But it doesn't say that you have to maintain it. So we don't know, could you restore your FTE amount on July 1st, submit your forgiveness, and then let half your people go? I'm not saying you would do that, but the rules don't say if you have to do that or not. So Tom, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that that's open-ended right now, but the way it reads, it seems like if you could go out and hire back everyone at that date, and then if you have reductions after that date, it seems like you would qualify. I think that the other thing that they're going to be dealing with is there are some certifications that allow you to say, hey, I did try to hire people back, but they refused to come back to work for me. And that would be another way out of the reduction. And the other way is that if you're in a business where you've tried to hire people and you're just unable to get people hired, you can also certify to that.
Yeah, but you have to have, one of the things we've talked about with the ISBA, you have to have proof of that. So like email chains or something, we believe if you get audited, I would say with 20, the predictions of unemployment going up, but it may not, right? The numbers were better. It's going to be hard pressed to say I couldn't find somebody. But if you were a high skilled business, or the other out is if the unemployment amount of $600 enticed your employees not to come back. But then again, the argument is, when does that date happen? Is it when you supply forgiveness, or do you have to wait all the way to December 31st? That's the ruling that nobody knows.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. We'll see another round. Regarding the tool that we built, Tim, with Ryan's help, I think it was great at the time, but now the 24 weeks kind of blows that kind of out of the water. And I think that we haven't updated it because we knew that there were changes coming. And I think we will continue to see changes coming over the next few weeks, certainly, Joe. And I know that you guys will incorporate that into your tool. I think where we're at, we're gonna share with all of our customers and clients that they need to go to the ppp.bank. We will help them with that, make sure that they've got good information, but we're going to rely on you at this point because we consider you the expert.
Really, that's the message I think we all can, just like our leadership around the coronavirus, is for all of us to encourage this is the best one. I mean, he builds it for institutions. They got to, so this is not a heavy drill for him, but it's a lot heavier than what anybody else would be doing.
Yeah, and I think what's changed here is early on with that 8-week period, it was really critical to plan. You had to really look at where you were spending your money and what time period in order to get that forgiveness. Now with the 24 weeks, it really kind of throws that out. I mean, unless you've just had a disastrous 24 weeks, you should get most of your PPP loans forgiven. And I think, we still got to continue to think about, what affects you in that equation. So if you have had a reduction in workforce, like Joe's pointed out, you really have to be thinking about how do I get reestablished? How do I get employees back working and gainfully employed during this period to get that forgiveness? And, we'll just continue to look for guidance as they put new guidance out.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay.
And I will say one thing, if you are lucky enough to bank with one of the banks, and I'm just kidding here, that uses Testlar, this is actually what it looks like inside a bank. It won't have Testlar, it'll be inside the bank's website. So you'll actually, like if you banked with Legacy National Bank, you would go to their website. One of the things, Tom, that's built into it is they can save so they can come back later, but they can add you. So they'll be able to add their CPAs to say, hey, CPA, can you help me fill this out? And then they'll fill it out inside there before they submit, and then they DocuSign it. So we make it 100% electronic. It'll go back to the bank all electronically signed. But the PPP one is for public. You can't save it. We're going to make it export if you want to fill it out and play with it. If you bank with a bank that uses Testlar, then they'll be able to come in here, and Tom, you'll be able to come in there and assist them. Like I have my example here of adding my CPA so that they can log in and look at it as well. But if there's any questions on PPP, I'd be glad to answer them outside of the site.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question. And so we're just talking about insurance, and my understanding was that insurance premiums were considered part of payroll. Is that not true?
There's so health insurance is actually a separate component that is not considered part of payroll directly, but it is part of the numbers, but it's not the same as the wage per employee. So the SBA went from a mentality of what's your total payroll to a mentality of I want every employee lined out one by one. And then payroll becomes a separate component that does get counted, but it's individually by itself. Now, the argument is if you're a sole proprietor, does your health insurance count? Well, that's a fun argument that the guidance that the Treasury Department's let out some guidance. And as of now, we believe it can count in your Schedule C, but not count in the separate health insurance component. I don't know, Tom, if you have any thoughts on that one.
I don't at this point.
Okay, thanks. I have one more question. I don't know if you can answer this. I do bank with Arvest, so I guess I'll be playing with your tool and then hope it works with my bank.
We don't have Arvest. I know those folks. They're using, I think, Abrigo. So you'll have a different tool. Hope it works.
Okay. Okay. But I could still export your tool and kind of play with it to see what my numbers would be. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. PPP Bank is for the general public. You could play around, but they do have a solution. I've talked to those. They're good folks over there.
Okay. Yeah, no, I appreciate them as well. But I got the loan through Arvest, but I actually bank through someone else. So when I got the loan dispersed, they gave it to me in a cashier's check. And then a few days later, I deposited it into our account. And so the disbursement date is a little unclear. Is it when I deposit it? I mean, I guess I just have to ask the bank, but.
It will be the day they gave you the funds. So technically it should be the day they did that cashier's check, no matter when you delayed the funding. and your forgiveness will have to be through the bank you got it from. The SBA has made that. That's one of the rules. You can't, like, let's say you got it from Bank A and you're like, man, I really want to forgive it at Bank B. You have to go through the bank you got the loan at.
No, I know I plan on doing that. I just was curious. So it would be like the date on their cashier's check.
It could be. You got to be careful though, because this is where banks can goof up. Let's say they wrote you a cashier's check and they held it for 3 days before you got it because you just couldn't get up there. The bank's going to have to, because of what's in E-Tran, the system that's used in their record, they're going to say your disbursement date was the day they wrote that cashier's check, which was 3 days earlier. If they had the ability to disperse it to you and you just delayed getting to the branch to get it. So there's some caution there. Like if you got it the day you could have gotten it the first one, that's probably, but you probably have to contact the bank to get it.
Just to double check.
Just to double check. But if they've made good faith and dispersed it and you just don't get it, that's not their fault. They're going to count disbursement as the day they gave you the funds.
Wrote the check. Okay, no problem. Thank you.
More likely aligns with the cashier's check date, but mine, that's right. You might want to get that confirmed. Okay. Any other questions? Joe, thank you. I was thinking, if Mike McGibney's still on the call, I was thinking one day I introduced Michael Eisman as our Bill Gates. And I was trying to think of what we compare Joe to. I think we'd probably compare him to Mark Benioff or something, the Salesforce founder, to grow into someone like that. So we'll put you at that future ranking, Joe. No pressure there, but thanks for all you've done. That's really huge what you've done. Todd Wood says we don't always get the opportunity to lead on big things very often, and then he goes on to say, but there's a lot of little things we can find to jump into and be added to. These were big things, and Joe sees the opportunity and his people. Joe, one more thing before we wrap up. So you said to the group, look, this is a lot more work. We're not serving banks now. We want to build this thing. It's going to take a lot of hours. And you put that out to the teams. Is that right? Just make sure everybody was bought in?
Yeah, I mean, it's easier. I mean, we always have a mission of serving community banks. I'm a big advocate of community banks. I think PPP has proven that community banks versus large banks, and Arvest, by the way, almost every bank you think of in Arkansas, outside of Bank of America, Wells Fargo, are community banks. They're $20 billion in assets versus a $2 trillion asset bank. Our team always has that mission to serve them. But when we knew we could go a step further and serve small businesses that were hurting, it just really galvanizes the team and kind of push them forward. I mean, don't get me wrong, we are making revenue off of our customers, but even then we're 1/5 the cost of our nearest competitor. And maybe that's ignorance on our part, but we were looking at it as a small company. How can we help community banks, help their communities, get a good reputation doing it, and that will pay better dividends than gouging somebody for a cost now. And that's kind of the philosophy, and that's what our team's behind. I will tell you, though, every time the government releases a ruling, it becomes a 24 hours, no exaggeration, workday to try to update stuff as fast as we can. And just like you, we're reading the same sentence over and over, like, do I understand what this even says? And then sending it to other people, hoping they can tell us what it says. Yeah.
Interim final ruling. That's wish we could do those, right? In our world. Well, thank you all. Our time's up for today. Before we wrap up, is there anyone want to make any final comments before we wrap up, or just a nugget or something? Joe, thank you very much. You've been awesome. Jody Dealday and Sarah, y'all gave Tommy some great advice last week, 2 weeks ago. That was really special. That's on our YouTube channel, CEO Forums. And it's wonderful what they shared with Tommy, and I think that's going to help him move a little faster on his fundraising activities. Y'all show great leadership. I just love hearing the interaction. That's what this hopefully is all about, day in and day out. So we appreciate everybody being here with us today, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the 24th. We'll post this recording. I guess we ought to try to get it distributed. And tell everybody about the PPP bank. You're handing them a $500 to $1,000 check, probably, that they would have had to spend if you fully allocate the time it's going to take to do this. So you're handing out $500 bills to everybody you refer this to that was going to have to do it any other way. So that'd be fair, Tom Porterfield? You agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. We've invested a lot of time and fees in our clients, helping them comply with this and get ready for the forgiveness. So very easily $500.
So hire Tom to make sure you got it right. Use Joe's tool. You'll be a lot better, a lot further ahead, right?
We disclaim that we don't guarantee any accuracy, just so you know.
Yeah, I bet you do. You're smart, but we trust you. We trust you. Thank you all for being with us.
Thanks, everybody.